Hello and welcome everyone, particularly those who are new to Achates Inspires. My name is Lucy Oliver Harrison and I'm Associate Director of Strategy at Achates. This is a pre-recorded event which will be first broadcast at 1 p.m. on Tuesday, the 21st of November. When it is broadcast, there will be Achates colleagues on hand to answer any questions via the comments section, so please do get in touch. To give you some background to Achates and this Inspires event, over 10 years, Achates has provided provocation and inspiration to organisations and senior individuals across the cultural sector, providing expert, market disruptor and inclusive thinking across strategy, recruitment and fundraising. Since 2019, Achates Live has provided practical help and support with monthly sessions for fundraisers in the cultural sector. At a time when the cultural sector faces multiple challenges and opportunities, leaders need to come together, find solutions, and inspire the future for the sector. Achates Inspires provides an opportunity for senior leaders to share with those in similar roles, to learn from others within and outside the sector, and to generate new ideas. Achates Inspires provides a cross-arts forum for chief executives, executive directors, and other senior leaders, hearing from expert voices on new opportunities across organisational and creative development and pooling knowledge across the sector. Achates Inspires builds on the art form networks that existed before or as a result of the COVID pandemic and encourages cross-art form cultural sector-wide participation. Achates Inspires exists online to ensure that as many leaders as possible can engage. We host in-person meetings twice a year, so do sign up to the newsletter for further details. So I'm really pleased to welcome you to today's session, The Arts Green Book, Moving Beyond a Sustainable Sector. And I will shortly introduce our guest, Andrew Wylie. With the impact of the climate crisis evident all around us and the ongoing information shared from experts about the grim reality of our future, our responsibility to mitigate the impact of our sector on the climate crisis is increasingly at the forefront of planning and developing our working practices. The Achates 8 types of value, which I will share on my screen now. Hopefully you can see those, outline the impact cultural projects can create. You can find these on our website and we'll copy a link in the comments section. You'll note here that whilst we would like to, we don't yet include environmental as a type of value, as we're yet to come across a project that drives positive environmental impact, with organisations instead focused on mitigating their impact. However, the first UK museum COP held this month at Tate Modern, which brought together national and regional museums from across the UK, agreed to take collective action on the climate crisis, working more sustainably as a sector to reduce their environmental impact, but also to go beyond that and take responsibility for encouraging audiences to engage with the issues and inspire them to take positive action. So if the arts are to be part of the most critical conversation humanity faces, they have to be sustainable themselves, but do they also have a role in driving positive environmental impact? I'll just stop sharing that now. The Arts Green Book, an initiative led and co-authored by sustainability experts Buro Happold and Renew Culture and supported by Arts Council England and the Greater London Authority, exists to ensure our cultural sector buildings are working more and as sustainably as we can. The Green Book brought together arts organisations and sustainability experts to create common guidance for making the arts sustainable. It is a free resource for everyone in the UK arts sector and has been adopted by a wide range of cultural organisations. Today, it is a real pleasure to welcome Andrew Wylie from Buro Happold, whose experience is responsible for leading the portfolio of Buro Happold's UK culture sector projects. As a partner, he is also one of the UK executive team responsible for the operations and strategy of the UK Buildings Group. Andrew specialises in complex new build and refurbishment projects. He has experience in multidisciplinary design on various complex new build and refurbishment projects, with experience in museums and performance venues. He led Buro Happold's team and collaborated with Renew Culture to create the award-winning Theatre Green Book, which is now published in 6 languages and led to the Arts Green Book. Thank you so much for joining us, Andrew.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Really enjoying sharing my experience of how the Theatre Green Book and subsequently the Arts Green Book came about, and actually the potential for collective engagement across the sector, and the potential that it has to go beyond just the sustainable operation of a whole sector, but actually the whole opportunity that deep engagement in the challenge of the planetary emergency, effectively, that we are facing, that the cultural sector can support and really impact behaviour change across society.
Yeah, thank you so much. And so I wondered if it would be possible to just start with a little bit of kind of context for those who don't know about it so much, about what led you to building on the success of the Theatre Green Book to develop the Arts Green Book, what the kind of main scope of it is, its role in the sector, and the impact that it's trying to bring, and really why Buro Happold saw this as a kind of key project to put resource behind at this moment.
Yeah, certainly. So I think I need to go back to the inception of the Theatre Green Book to be able to sort of explain the background, and therefore how it led on. The Arts Green Book led on from that. So as you mentioned, the impact of COVID to the whole of the arts sector was massive. Specifically, theatres, which I had current clients. I was working on projects with theatres, and all of a sudden their doors were closed. There were staff had time, were on furlough, or had time to think. And I was talked to with Paddy Dillon, Renew Culture. Really wanted to sort of see what we could do to help in this scenario. Initially the thinking was around, well, how do you open buildings in a socially distanced way? But actually, and it's so typical of the approach of the whole of the cultural sector. The thinking was far more long term than just what we just did. Yes, there was a desire to be re-engaging with audiences, with patrons, but actually it was, how can we come out of this stronger? And the real burning desire and recognition that sustainability, the climate emergency, and biodiversity emergency was something that they really wanted to impact on. And we developed a methodology then, which basically used the power of Zoom and collective electronic communication to hold lots and lots of workshops. We realised that this wasn't something that was going to have any success if it was done to a group of people, a sector. And so this was something which was the blending of the technical knowledge and expertise that we held as and have as sustainability and engineers, understanding how buildings work, the key principles behind sustainable development, but actually a lot of knowledge held by theatres. So that blending together, extracting that knowledge and information, led us to create the Theatre Green Book in 3 volumes. Sustainable productions, everything that goes on stage, the art form, if you like. Sustainable buildings, how you can reduce, and principally focused around the operation and carbon reduction of buildings. And then sustainable operations, volume 3. Now, this won awards. It won an innovation award with Stage Awards, and was being really energetically adopted through that engagement and then practical, easy to access guidelines. So we were subsequently approached by the Arts Council and the GLA to say, right, how now do we broaden this to cover every art form across the UK? And so we started with volume 3, the buildings part of the Theatre Green Book, and looked at how we could adapt and find the specific challenges that were unique to different forms of arts buildings across the UK. So again, that methodology of engagement and consultation, key and really important to the uptake, because one of the key principles of this is that everybody has a role to play, not just within the Theatre Green Book, but in any form of response. it's a team effort. And so that engagement was really important. We consulted with museums, galleries, libraries, to name but a few, to help us create this adapted volume 2 sustainable buildings for the first step of the Arts Green book. And that I mean was a pleasure to do. It was something which generated something that we were able to have the credibility behind, because it was, again, wasn't Buro Happold or Renew Culture imposing something on the sector.
Absolutely, and I think it's sort of that the nature of collaboration and how we move forward with all the knowledge and expertise, like you said, and kind of join together, I suppose, to address this issue. It feels incredibly important that there is that kind of collaborative effort, because it's not something that can be addressed in terms of the scale of the challenge is not something that can be addressed in isolation. And so it's fantastic to kind of hear how I suppose the opportunity that COVID unfortunately kind of brought us in, but fortunately for this, has led to this. And I suppose obviously there kind of the time that people may have had, obviously that has kind of fast disappeared as the world reopened over the last kind of couple of years. And I suppose what I'd love to hear is a little bit about kind of how you find organizations are kind of continuing to put this as a priority, I suppose, within their organizations, and do you feel that kind of that the people are kind of still trying to prioritize it within their organizations? And are there particular kind of case studies, I suppose, where you feel that where you're working with people at the moment, and that's a kind of a good example of the opportunity, I suppose, that people are finding to ensure this doesn't get lost off the agenda, I suppose?
Yeah, absolutely. I think absolutely, this is something that is every cultural organisation, whether I've got an active live project, building project, or whether it's just a dialogue to help explain and support the Arts Green Book, recognise that this is something that is really important to their viability. So the demand might come from I'm a trustee at the Lowry in Salford, and looking at the challenges that as an organisation they have in operating their building, and the challenge of buying energy and the fluctuation in energy prices, and the challenge that brings to their budgeting process. So there might be a demand from the general operational side, and how do we make sure that we are able to budget and make sure that we dedicate as much of our income to our core mission, our art. So there's a demand and a pressure that is from the operational side. There's also a social value and demand, not only to attract staff, but also increasingly the demand from patrons and visitors, that this is something that is really important for them to see, that the arts organisations that they are emotionally invested in share the same values and approach and concern around the state of the planet and what the human species is doing to it. And surveys have demonstrated that audiences do believe that cultural venues, theatres, museums, galleries have a role to play beyond just their own decarbonisation and addressing biodiversity loss and water usage, but also in communicating. Arts organisations are brilliant storytellers, are amazing at communicating and holding and engaging with their patrons. Something that very quickly realised as engineers, we understand technology, we understand process and technical solutions, but we're very poor at communicating that. We're not influencers in the same way that the arts organisations can be. So I genuinely see that drive by arts organisations, when they feel comfortable and confident with the knowledge, it's quite a powerful opportunity, if you like.
Yeah, and I suppose then, thank you. Do you think there is more opportunity, and should kind of cultural organisations be kind of celebrating and promoting more the kind of changes that they've made to their audiences? Because I suppose the kind of there is an ongoing dialogue with the audiences that you're kind of engaging and connecting with, but that might not extend to kind of what happens behind the scenes, and really and kind of how organisations are putting that as a priority. And do you think that organisations could do more actually to kind of really celebrate where they are kind of driving as much change and at least mitigating?
Yes, I certainly do. Everybody is on a different stage of their decarbonisation, their regenerative journey. And sometimes that, if I'm not really well advanced on this and I have all the answers, I want to keep quiet about this because I feel vulnerable. And something I've learned actually is that recognizing what you do know, what you don't know, but being comfortable to ask questions, engage, gather support, build your network with a very clear vision and strategy of where you want to get to, I think is really powerful. We, as consulting engineers, have committed to science-based targets as an organisation. When we made that commitment, we didn't have a step-by-step plan saying, well, we're comfortable, but we can get to those science-based targets because this in year one we're going to do this, year two we're going to do this, etc. We felt this was a stretch. We felt this was a challenge. We put ourselves out there and felt that we would then, by the collective endeavour of our organisation, work to be able to meet that challenge. And I think the same can be type of approach, potentially could be one that can really enhance that relationship and buy-in with audiences. We're on a journey. You're going to have to help us. Trust us. We're going to give it our best endeavours to go on this journey and have a really celebratory, successful outcome. We're going to communicate to you regularly what steps we're making and how we're going to progress. Whether you're 80% of your way to net zero, or whether you're taking those early tentative steps, but that audience research tells us that the audiences are really interested and believe that organisations should be making an impact in this space.
Yes, absolutely, and I think it's so interesting that kind of establishing a shared responsibility, really, and how that is effectively kind of communicated, but also generated in terms of bringing people into that narrative, like you were saying, and going on that journey together, and actually if there are efforts being made, and actually what can audiences do as well in terms of supporting that organisation to kind of meet its objectives or its vision, that hopefully is kind of a shared kind of vision and also responsibility around driving those ambitions and objectives.
But something I heard lots about. I was at the museum's COP, and the challenges that the sector faces are constant and broad. One of them, skills. If you're trying to attract the best people to work in your organisation, having values that align with them, having a desire to be making a societal impact, really, really valuable and really important for younger generations. We certainly see that as we need to be doing that to attract young engineers into Buro Happold, our own organisation. But I'm adamant that is the case across for all employers. But also that if you're an organisation which relies on volunteers, that dialogue with your volunteers could deepen that relationship, and you may discover that there are untapped skills, knowledge within your volunteer or audience group that can help you, help steer you on that journey.
And absolutely. And did you and obviously the museum's COP, it seems like there was partly a shift really in terms of moving from mitigating to impact to driving positive impact. And did you observe that shift, or what do you think has changed in terms of that relationship, I suppose, to the impact that the sector can have?
I have to hold my hand up. I was there as an outsider observing, so and it's the first time that I've been through an NMDC event, so fascinating to see. But and participating, we were presenting some case study work which we are doing for NMDC. But the enthusiasm, the recognition within the room, within the conference was very clear, and really encouraging to hear the unanimous support for seeing the role, the ethical role that museums have to play in this was really, really encouraging, and can only sort of really be a stepping off point of collective endeavour. Some museums further advanced have greater resources, but others there to be within a network that are travelling on this challenging journey, I think was fantastic to see.
Yeah, of course. And in terms of the cultural buildings and the role that those can play, I suppose that seems to be your starting point. And obviously in terms of the kind of the potential to not only mitigate impact, but also in terms of the connection that those organisations and venues are likely to have to their communities, and that the ability to kind of drive that change. I suppose I just wanted to kind of hear a bit more, if possible, about kind of cultural buildings, and when it comes to conversations about the climate crisis, how you think their role is key in terms of driving change more broadly for the sector, but also for society as well, and what role you think they can play.
Absolutely. So museums, galleries, cultural buildings, often not exclusively, but often quite old buildings, have been around. They are embedded in the social fabric of towns, cities, communities. And so, if I'm talking in an engineering numbers perspective, the investment in building, the carbon that has gone into building those buildings is there and is banked, and the longevity of those buildings. The most sustainable building is the building that already exists. Building something new is detrimental in almost all circumstances. So the fact that we're talking about buildings that are cherished, that are historic, there's a very good case there for increasing the longevity of these buildings. And so that's an example to that, being able to show then how you reduce the carbon emissions from operations of these buildings, often listed with their own unique challenges. Being able to demonstrate how museums who are challenged by funding are able to make positive steps is an example to the whole of the built environment in the construction sector. And then being able to tell your story about what you've done, being able to demonstrate that you've gone through a rigorous process and you have made improvements, I think is really valuable. And that may be a scary idea. It may be that, well, crikey, your listed building can't do anything to this, but working through a rigorous methodology of looking at how you can reduce the demand, how you can make sure that the building envelope, the walls, the roof, the windows, the doors don't leak energy, are airtight. If possible, you can add insulation. but doing this in a very rigorous methodology. Then looking at how you control all of your systems that make the building comfortable. Yeah, are you overheating? Are you overcooling your building? Are you not turning things off when there aren't people in the building? But going through that rigorous methodology can then lead to substantial savings and something which is there ready to be shared and celebrated.
Definitely, and I think there's often a perception, I suppose, that these measures that can be taken are incur costs rather than save costs. And I suppose I just wonder if you could share maybe some examples of how how organisations can deliver this without incurring prohibitive costs, especially at the current climate.
But so the Arts Green Book is that there's a methodology in the buildings volume there around looking at the prioritisation of solutions of interventions. We prioritise around quick wins, very low or no cost solutions or things to implement, maintenance projects, things which are part of an annual maintenance cycle, which may occur some cost, can be budgeted for, and then capital projects. Now we are in the process of completing a suite of case studies for NMDC, looking at where we've visited 6 museums, had our engineers walk around and look at those, do visual inspection and surveys, start to looking at control systems, digging around in plant rooms, all of the unglamorous parts of museum buildings. And starting then to look at the opportunities for decarbonising those buildings, and the solutions, we haven't published this yet, and we're still sort of going through the detailed findings. But typically within the quick wins solutions, things around making sure that timing schedules for plant operating, heating, cooling is set to when the building's being occupied. They're not all, it may sound obvious, but checking something like that and making sure that the operating schedules are aligned with operating hours of buildings. Basic draft proofing and is another easy quick win. And actually then not only the timing, but actually the set point, the temperature that some systems are set to operate at. Just looking at those, and can they be adjusted, particularly in non-critical collection, storage, or display spaces. But can that be reduced? And within those quick wins, those are by no means exclusive, but the 6 buildings that we looked at, those were all common amongst all of those. And just within that, there's a potential for a 2 to 4% reduction in carbon and energy costs for buildings. Then looking at some of those maintenance projects, looking at switching to LED lighting, budget for replacement of lights, but actually let's start looking at how we can make that as a rollout for looking at installing sensor controls so that lights are automatically turned off, looking at further improvements to air tightness, repairing damaged insulation that's already existing. And I think things like this sort of fall into a maintenance category. And one thing we were looking at, every public building has to have a display energy certificate. It's something which is like your white goods, your rating of A to F on you get on a fridge. But every public building of a certain size has to have one of these, and by implementing implementing your quick wins, and probably 50% of those maintenance projects that we identified in those 6 case studies, we could move the display energy certificate performance up a band, and then the capital projects are the ones which really have the opportunity to shift the dial. This is looking at adding insulation, repairing windows, or adding secondary glazing. But and then one of the biggest impacts would be looking to move from gas boilers to air source or water source heat pumps to heat and cool buildings. But when you start to plan and generate that sort of prioritized list, you can start to see how you can over time, move on that journey. Give yourself some targets to aim for, being ready for funding opportunities, and something to talk with funders and donors about.
Definitely, those are some really clear kind of ways that people can actually quite effectively and quickly make a difference to their organisation, and like you said, that prioritize those within the organisation as a whole and the different operational and artistic demands that an organisation needs to continue to deliver, but ensuring that those targets are in place and that people are kind of funding ready for when those opportunities come along. And I suppose I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit more about the moving beyond the kind of mitigation and the positive environmental impact, and what measures you think cultural organisations could take in the kind of medium term to drive a positive impact rather than for environmental change, rather than just kind of mitigating their impact.
I think the one of the key things is thinking about the size of your network and the influence that you can have. But then actually be thinking about, well, look, we're not trying to do this in isolation. We're part of a community. Could you be providing leadership with local businesses, other organisations that are geographically local to you, helping them on their journey, but then starting to think, right, okay, we're a bigger network. We have, how can we collaborate around sharing skills and knowledge and upskilling each other, and potentially finding that there are skills to be shared. How could we potentially have an improved collective buying power when we're starting to think that we actually have the ability to influence our supply chain? And if you have a larger pool of resources, now that might actually be partner cultural organisations within your city, but it might be local businesses as well. Might be looking at, well, how actually we're starting to really think and delve into the operational processes of your building, thinking about what's our waste streams. What do we do with those waste streams? Are our waste streams, if food waste, other things, are they something which could be an input resource to another business or something like that? So it is our coffee grounds, something which could go to a local urban grower. Just as one very small example, but showing how you as an organisation can network yourself and start to think about the impact that you can have to help other businesses, I think. And it's quite fun and exciting to when you start changing your mindset, where that might lead you, and just that exploration and what you might find could, once you're in that mindset, what you find might be the opportunity. It's not necessarily scripted. There's no playbook necessarily to follow. It might be something that's wholly unique, but wholly enjoyable and celebratory.
Definitely, and that is finding those kind of bespoke, specific kind of ways that an organisation can work with the people and organisations that are around it, and also I suppose through the kind of how that can be supported through the artistic work, even if it's not overt, and what it is that we're kind of presenting, and how and what is the kind of a message that goes alongside that, or kind of as part of that, in terms of really informing, influencing, inspiring those who connect with that work as well.
How might it be an opportunity for you to grow your audiences? Branching out into another area, making your facilities available for other community groups and things like that. It's always finding the time to be able to explore this sometimes feels like a luxury, but actually you've got to think that it's a really valuable thing to do and be excited about the opportunity that it might bring.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And so in terms of the kind of going forward, obviously you're developing the case studies, you are and you're continuing to kind of drive the Arts Green Book with across the sector. What are the kind of ambitions for the Arts Green Book going forward and for Buro Happold as well in this area?
I guess we want to ensure that it endures and sustains and is continued to be seen as relevant, fresh, easy to engage with. So continued energy in doing that, recognizing that whilst the principles of sustainability aren't changing, the way that the way ideas, the way that people engage does change over time, and making sure that is all brought into making sure that the Arts Green Book maintains its relevance. I think we're exploring how different sector organisations could take greater ownership of the Arts Green Book and potentially become even more specific and detailed to different subsectors, so be that UK film, gallery climate coalition, potentially around the use for museums and galleries. So I think seeing how it can be enhanced, made more relevant, more specific. I have a real big itch to scratch around providing a really good quality, detailed advice around collection storage. We're fortunate enough to be designing a number of large collection stores at the moment, but the learning that we've taken from that, I think, needs to be shared, and there are significant opportunities to reduce energy in use for collection storage. So there's definitely a piece of shared learning that we want to be involved in collection storage. And then actually, well, what's the demand and where does the advice need to be? And as I said, the Arts Green Book is volume 2, building specific, but is there something more around the productions, temporary exhibitions, more guidance around that and the equivalent of the volume 1, or is there more guidance around operations and bars and shops and museum shops and things like that? So there's plenty of work to do, and we're thoroughly committed to helping the sector, and we'll see where the demand and where we get in the future.
Definitely, and I think that kind of keeping it relevant and how that changes over time as the need and the opportunity evolves, and also and how different organizations are working and adapting that to ensure that it's got as wider a breadth as possible. It's of course kind of incredibly important, and obviously Buro Happold with Renew Culture have been kind of leading the way with this, and I just wondered if there were some other partnerships that you think specifically the construction sector could have to support the culture sector more broadly, or kind of, is there anything that you think cultural organizations could look to or build with the construction sector or other sectors that may kind of allow for more opportunities like this to kind of collaborate and change?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't have any sort of perfectly ready formed ideas, but that certainly listening to the discussions that the museum's got, the challenge around knowledge and skills, particularly with executive decision makers in the cultural sector, is a challenge, and that's something which I work with fantastic colleagues, partners that are busy working and engaged designing museums and galleries, and have this engineering knowledge around sustainability, carbon reduction, and just wondering whether there's some form of industry mentorship program whereby those that are knowledgeable within the engineering and construction sector can find some form of mentorship buddies type approach and share their knowledge within the art sector. Gestation of an idea, nothing formed yet, but I do think there are opportunities there. But I think all relationships to be really fruitful and enduring, it needs to be symbiotic. And I just sort of trying to think, well, actually, how can museums, galleries, the art sector help with as I identified that challenge around communication, that challenge of the communication around the need to engage, the communicating in some instances some slightly more technical information, but how can that type of relationship really pull both ways and work both ways? And again, it's not a sort of trying to get the art sector to solve all of the problems, but I do think that again there's something there that could be beneficial to the broader society around equality and the communication of solutions, of approaches, alongside that support in the cultural sector that the construction industry can find.
Definitely, I think there are obviously so many kind of assets that the sector can bring and share, and how to kind of, going back to the starting point of how you bring that all together and work collaboratively to understand what the opportunity is, and like you said, build kind of symbiotic kind of relationships that drive a wider change for society, as well as individual sectors and organizations within that as well. That feels incredibly important. And so we've talked about kind of quick wins within buildings. We've kind of talked about how to kind of keep it as a priority within your organization. We've talked about kind of communicating effectively what it is that you're doing, but also opportunities to drive positive impact as well as mitigate. Is there anything that you kind of would like to add, or any kind of I suppose message that you kind of would like to get over in terms of this kind of incredible kind of process that you're going through, and how that can drive forward?
A couple of things, just on the building side of things. Get to know your building, understand it. You may be fortunate that you're an organisation that has a facilities team that look after your building, but I'd say everybody should understand their building, what it does well, what it doesn't do well, where it's leaky, etc. And the Art Screen book and the home survey tool within that gives you a framework for doing that, even if you're not a buildings person. So I think organisations need to understand and their building, and have that collective organizational understanding of their building. And then the second thing really is that it's a collective endeavor, and something which we sort of was if you like, a soundbite or a takeaway from the Theatre Green Book Volume 1 was really invest in people, not stuff. So it really is valuable to be giving people time to do this in that prioritisation process. By having a bit more time to think about things, you will quite often think of a more sustainable, lower carbon way of doing things in your daily operations. So in a busy world where people are time poor, really trying to find ways of providing people with time, staff with time, to invest in thinking and upskilling, becoming carbon literate, and then thinking about their processes to be able to affect change. Invest in time, and people's time, not stuff.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So yes, get to know your building, understand it, recognize the opportunity for collective endeavor and invest in the people around you to ensure that you can drive that forward. Yeah, that sounds like a positive a positive message. And and thank you so much, Andrew, for kind of taking the time to share with us about the Theatre Green Book and the Arts Green Book. It's an amazing initiative that we all have a responsibility to drive forward and implement, but also that in terms of the kind of responsibility that we have to encourage positive impact as well as mitigating it, I think is a kind of clear opportunity there, which seems to be kind of coming through a lot now. So thank you for that.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So I will, thank you again, Andrew, and to everyone who's been watching. An Achates colleague will be monitoring the comments section for about 10 minutes or so to answer any questions that you might have from watching. And just a reminder that Achates offers a range of support from strategy for business planning to feasibility studies, recruitment support, from development positions to CEO and trustee roles, and organisational change, helping you transform your boards and teams through new hires and development and support of pre-existing teams. The next Achates Inspires will be in January. We're taking a break in December, and that will be online, and more details of that will be shared before the end of the year. So thank you very much for your time.